where today's show focuses on the hot topics for the week. My name is Dr. Sharon Michael Chadwell. I'm one of your panelists. We also have Chris Dawkins as well as Caleb Alexander. Now, when we post our hot topics into YouTube, we usually have them out there Wednesday, Thursday of the week. But generally what happens is this. Something always happens Friday or Saturday. So we have 5 hot topics we're going to talk about and possibly a couple more. So with that in mind, let's get started. So this week we've seen, or over the past few weeks, we have seen Bernie Sanders and AOC out around the country delving deep into the red sections of these various states with huge attendances of people talking about issues impacting their lives. There's even talk of AOC possibly running for president. So what I wanted to do was talk to you guys about that. Do you think that, first of all, what do you think about the rallies?
I think they've been great. I mean, at least they're doing something. They are, even though Bernie calls himself an independent, I still consider him a Democrat. And I think for the both of them going out was really great. I think that he has neutralized a lot of people saying he's too old by having AOC with him. So I think it's been really, really good.
Okay, what do you think about it?
No, I think it's good because it shows that the resistance has a pulse. You know what I mean? And so for a while, it was like they were throwing everything at society. And I think the Democrats were reeling and didn't know how to respond. And so I think Bernie and AOC taking to the road and galvanizing the resistance and bringing people out to voice their concerns and really just showcasing the size of the rally and showcasing the size of the discontent in this country.
Especially in red MAGA territory.
In red states. I think bringing those people out to say that they're angry and upset, and Trump seeing that what he considers his base showing up in these huge numbers at a Bernie and an AOC rally, I think that may eventually he may get the message.
And I think we have to also consider that Tim Walz is out there on some type of tour talking to people.
Getting great numbers as well.
Now, interesting that we had Bernie Sanders and AOC out there, and then somewhere close, within a couple of weeks later, we had what was his name, up in New Jersey, who did the 25, Cory Booker doing that 25-hour 25-hour filibuster, and we're also hearing about Tim Walz in the community. So what does this have to do with us? Will this impact black folks?
Definitely, in my opinion. I mean, look, this is the 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Okay? You better figure out what the hell you're going to do, black folks, right now, because you don't know, you don't have a plan, you ain't got no leader. Okay, so individually, you're going to have to figure out what the heck you're going to do. And what I mean by that, the majority of us are Democrats. And if the majority of us are Democrats, like Caleb said, Democrats seem to be reeling. So now you got AOC and you got Bernie out there who are doing their thing. So yes, I do believe that it gives us hope that somebody is at least doing something. And because black people, you ain't going to like to hear this, but since you ain't got no leader yourself, you might have to take on somebody in the Democratic Party.
Now, if I know a lot of us did not vote. A lot of black folks did not vote. So if this is the motivator that will help you make that decision, consider Trump's now talking about sending U.S. citizens down to El Salvador.
Right.
And we know that he's going to be targeting mostly black men. So black men, you've got to make a decision. You've got to get active in this, because if you don't, you may be writing away your own life.
That's right.
And I was talking to someone yesterday about having this conversation. We had this conversation yesterday, and they were like, you know what? There's been this out there. There's been a little bit of dialogue about white people saying, well, why aren't more black people being engaged? Why aren't more black people engaging? Why aren't black people taking to the streets and this and this and this? And so again, I think when we look at it, You know what I mean? We're probably saying, you know, we did our part on election day. You know what I mean? You guys didn't do your part on election day. So, you know, this is your mess. You clean it up. You know what I mean? Because we went out there and we did it in droves. Black women over 90-something%. Brothers out there over 80-something%. We did our part. We went out there and protested on election day. So, you know, so now it's your turn. You out there screaming and standing in front of Social Security office and all this kind of stuff. If you'd have rode with us on election day, you wouldn't be out there right now having to scream and protest and holler and stuff like that. So, but no, I mean, again, I do see it. And do we benefit from it? Yeah, of course. If you can stop the madness and roll back some of the, you know, because black people work for the federal government in huge numbers. So we can stop this shedding of jobs and Musk and Doge and, you know, and this madness. We invest in the economy. We have our retirement tied up into our 401ks. So yeah, definitely, if we can stop the madness, then yeah, it definitely benefits black people as well.
And I'm gonna add to that by saying we may end up still being the saviors again. Okay, and the reason why I say that is yes, you're correct. We showed up at the polls, okay, but the other people did. Okay, now you're in that situation. I'm not so sure we can afford to be able to say, we're going to sit this out and,
we can't.
And let you do whatever you're going to do.
We can't.
So we might have to come back and vote. Now, that doesn't mean that we can be president or whatever, because I don't think at this particular, I think the whole reason we're in the situation we're in starts with Barack Obama. Okay. And them not wanting that, and that precipitated a whole avalanche of things that, you know, that happened. But I do believe that we're going to, probably, if this is going to be saved, we're going to have to play a critical role in saving.
We have to. We can no longer afford to sit the couch, to vote the couch. I'm sorry to the other YouTubers who are preaching that, but our lives are at risk. Your children's lives are at risk. So I think you guys to really rethink your commitment to all of this, because it does have an impact on us.
Now, does that have anything to do with me self-deporting?
Can you come back and vote?
Yeah.
Okay. You're just on a vacation.
Okay, if you want to call it that.
Okay. So the next thing, mandatory AI in Beijing schools. Now, I have to admit, I love this. But at the same time, it hurts that we have a country, China, and even European countries that truly invest in education for all children, for their children. Here in the United States, if you just look at it, there's so much effort in taking money from schools, not feeding kids, not doing this for kids, that these people who are these Republicans, these MAGAs who are doing this, they're not thinking about the critical level of intelligence that these kids can bring to us as adults in this country. In the meantime, China is investing in their kids. AI, mandatory AI from K to 12.
So what does that mean?
That means that these kids are going to be so much more advanced.
No, what I mean, how is AI playing into their education? Are they teachers? Are they just
No.
They're
going to teach them the various elements related to AI.
Okay.
And it's going to be based on grade level.
Okay.
And I think that's really good. And they have to spend I think it's 8 or 13 hours a school year on it. So it's not going to be every day, but they're investing in the development of these students' knowledge of AI and what it can do for them, for the country in the future. Mm-hmm. United States needs to get off of trying to defund public education, because public education has a lot of kids in those schools with just enough money, they can be, their geniuses can be brought out even more. So I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed. And and they're targeting really the inner city schools, the rural schools. And I'm going to tell you now, having taught in the classroom, I saw some kids who were not classified as gifted and talented, who beat out schools in competition. So come on, United States, quit playing us.
My
take on this is definitely this. So, we have to get engaged. We have to invest in critical skills of tomorrow. China's enormous investment over the last 40 years is the reason they've not only caught up but surpassed us in certain technologies. And so they're going to continue to invest in their human infrastructure, and they'll continue to catch up, and they'll slowly continue to pass us in critical technologies. We have to, if we don't invest heavily in AI and in programming and in cyber, within the next 10 to 15 years, our kids will be considered functionally illiterate if they can't.
Right.
In American institutions, even in American higher education institutions, they are not teaching to embrace AI or those technologies. And so they're saying, oh, we have AI detection software, and if we detect you use any kind of AI, you're going to get a failing grade. And so whereas in other countries, other societies, they're embracing that. And they're teaching you how to use it, how to program it, what language, you know what I mean? And so they're teaching language modeling. And so, and if you don't teach these skills and how to properly use AI and what languages to input, we're going to be left behind in the business world. You know what I mean? In banking and finance across the board. And so we have to change the way we think about these technologies. How do we use these technologies? How do we use them in education? Instead of shunning them and banning them, we need to definitely embrace them and incorporate them in our teaching and in our learning, so that our kids are better prepared for the jobs of tomorrow.
Let me say this, Caleb, though. Education is very important. America probably rates, I think, out of maybe
60 schools, 60 countries.
Yeah, we rank maybe about 34, maybe. Okay. So, in what's going on in America today, and I offer this question to both of you, with what's going on in the America today, do we have the time and talent to be able to focus on education when we've got to focus on our mere existence?
Let me talk on that one. In Finland, they've got 2 teachers in the room. Most of the kids in those classrooms look alike. I'm talking about blonde hair, white. In Japan, the classroom structure looks alike. In the United States, there's so much diversity in those classrooms. And I really think where the shortfall here is that we have not learned how to leverage all that diversity more into elevating our education system more. Because now what we're seeing, foreign students can't apply for college in the United States. Again, let's attack the rural schools, let's attack the inner city schools, let's put all the money on the white side of town. But that's not what it's like, because if these kids are going to be able to function, they have to work together in a multicultural setting, because when they go on Zoom or Teams or whatever they have to meet, they're going to see different folks who may not look like them. So these students must learn how to work with one another.
Are you saying the students or the education system?
Both. You know, but particularly the kids. You've got students who have never had a black teacher in their entire career, and then they finally have one in a doctoral program. That's a culture shock, right there. So we're discrediting our system by not taking the strengths of all the cultures in this country, put them in the classroom, and have them learn from one another so that they can work with one another when they leave school.
Just as a side note, I'll say that I think higher education has definitely tried to do that. I think it's in the lower education, whether it be high schools and middle schools and so forth. I think those MAGA people who are either on your school boards or on your councils and so forth, it's like in this particular city where I grew up, you had to have one municipality kind of to one school district. Here, you got one municipality, but you got about 14 different school districts.
Multiple school
districts. Okay, and I think it's a disservice for somebody who's living in a poverty-stricken area, and they decide to move to, their employment has increased them to move uptown, so to speak, and they move to a better place, and their money goes to that new school system, but that old school system still suffers.
Right.
Yeah, and to me, that's a form of discrimination.
Right. Well, I mean, and we did have the Robin Hood system. We have this equalization of funding. So a lot of times the state does make up a lot of try to make up some of that funding gap.
The state?
They don't. Yeah, they don't.
Who's the governor of the state?
Yeah.
Who's the governor? Who's the governor?
Hot Wheels.
And he's trying to make it even.
No, so I mean, it's been. I mean, state does. They do some kind of a little bit of equalization of funds. You know what I mean? So there is a base level of funding. You know what I mean? That they do dispense. But my take on this subject is this administration has declared war on higher education. You know, they're really going after Harvard, threatening Harvard. The $2 billion, and then a couple of $100 million was it Columbia and multiple institutions, right? Brown, and so there is not a single innovation that has come about in the 20th century or 21st century where higher education or our universities did not play a part in it.
I agree.
We invest in our universities, and our universities lead that research. And so by pulling this research funding from the universities, you're not pulling it from, you're not punishing Harvard, you're punishing cancer research.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was Johns Hopkins who played an enormous role in the mission to Mars. You know what I mean? Or in universities that play a part in Hubble telescope. It was Stanford that played a part in the atomic research and in the nuclear bombs. You know what I mean? It was Stanford and Los Alamos and those universities that played a huge part in ending World War II. You know what I mean? With the atomic research. And so our universities play an enormous role in research and in pushing us forward. And so this war on education isn't a war. It really is a war on America's technological supremacy. Because if you keep taking funding from our universities, China's going to keep funding theirs.
But that's what I'm saying, so it's back to what I was saying before about the education piece. Can we really focus on that when we've got to focus on our mere existence? I mean, I don't know that we can do both.
Well, we don't have to focus on our mere existence. Our stock market was breaking records until this guy came in and started playing games.
But we've got to correct what's wrong now before we can even deal with education. Well, we can't deal with AI when there's a situation.
We, as I said before, we're riding in a jet stream of bullshit right now. Okay, so what we don't have a choice. We have to not only worry about our survival, but we have to also worry about our ability to compete around the world. And every time they take away funding from this and that and that and this, it pulls us further and further and further away. So I think that we have to worry about both sides because, there was sickle cell in my family. So for sure the funding for sickle cell was taken away. Sickle cell is still alive and well. I saw a patient in the hospital about a couple of months ago. You thought it was gone. No, it's alive and well. So if we don't have the researchers out there to figure out how to stop this, it's going to throw us worlds and worlds behind. There's a lot of research on breast cancer. If they're pulling away the money for that, there may have been a cure out there they were working on to stop it.
For what? Stop what?
Breast cancer.
Oh, I'm just saying. Capitalistic society. They ain't trying to stop nothing with cancer. They can't stop it with the money that they have. It ain't gonna be stopped.
No. I'm talking about the research. I know the pharmaceutical folks don't want it to be fixed. So I think that we're on a slippery slope in terms of fighting for our own existence, at the same time fighting for our critical knowledge existence.
Okay. What else we got, Doc?
Okay, so tomorrow is the big question mark. We know it's Easter, but there's rumor that 47 is going to declare martial law.
What?
Yeah.
For what reason?
He's just, yeah.
So why would he declare martial law? What's happened? Where is there so much unrest?
I mean, the question is kind of strange question, if you ask me. Why do we have tariffs? So he's created the argument that the United States is being infiltrated by the Venezuelans. They had to already send folks down to the border, military down to the border. There's a lot of fentanyl coming into the country, and this need for martial law. If anything, he wants to declare martial law to suspend much of the Constitution.
Well, let me say this. I want Caleb to answer because he's been the guy off camera that he and I were talking, and he said, I guarantee you that, you know,
Don't get my guarantee on camera. That was an on-camera guarantee. Don't get my camera. Don't get it on camera.
he said,
No, when we talk about on camera, a lot of it I don't want on camera.
so I wanna know, okay, can this possibly happen?
Martial law tomorrow? No. They haven't stirred up enough controversy.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a not to say that they won't try it in the future. You know what I mean?
Right.
They stir up enough race riots and drone strikes against Mexico, and I mean, if they follow through with their plans, but tomorrow I don't. They're not there yet. They're not there.
Can they get there?
Well,
And the reason why I'm asking you this is because of the military.
Right.
Because in order to invoke martial law, you're going to have to bring the military involved.
Right.
And the reason why I'm asking you, and really kind of sharing as well, you both feel that the military will be a savior for us.
I am hoping
Okay.
that the military will be the savior. There's some stuff that I've been looking at, talking to some other folks about regarding this topic, and that's really right now an offline topic. You know, I don't want to reveal too much of what they've told, you know, what they might have said to me, but the military is really reporting to a civilian commander-in-chief, and technically the civilians, you know, have control because they report, you know, that, you know, that's who they, you know, who they kind of work for. I would hope that it doesn't come down to martial law, but I think the big question is, I'm hoping that if martial law is activated, that the military people do not shoot civilians, U.S. civilians.
But if they're ordered to do so, what would prevent them from doing it?
I hope that, I'm just saying, I really hope that the military does not shoot military civilians.
Okay. I hope so too.
Caleb,
I'm gonna be watching it on TV.
So you know what? I mean, just a couple of things. So one, there would have to be protests, and black folks ain't taking a bait. Latinos ain't taking a bait. Ain't nobody out there in the street protesting. I think a lot of folks you see that are protesting out there right now, or white folks, grandma and grandpa screaming at the Social Security office. You know what I mean? And so I think a lot of us have been like, you know, we've seen the story before. I think black people are yawning. We've been through racist presidencies since the time we were brought to this country. You know what I mean? And so I think we're
So
like,
you think this too will pass?
absolutely.
Okay.
But again, and so, I mean,
So
just, if you want to play the, I mean, if we go if we got just the doomsday scenario, right? Let's roll with that. What would have to happen is, one, you would have to believe that American soldiers, citizen soldiers who come from the people, are going to turn their rifles on their neighbors, their friends, their husbands, their wives, their cousins.
their first grade teacher.
The first grade teacher, coach, English teacher. I mean, brothers and sisters. Nobody's going to get out there and shoot mom and dad or grandma and grandpa who's protesting because they lost their Social Security. So you'd have to believe that. Now, historically, I think you can look at Russia, and I think you could look at the Soviet Union, who tried to play that card, who called in Russian armored division and airborne divisions into Moscow to quell the protests. And what ended up happening historically, you saw Boris Yeltsin in front of the Kremlin standing on the tank, or in front of the Russian Duma and stuff, standing on the tank. And you had Russian women sticking flowers in the tank barrels. If you remember those, sticking flowers in the gun barrel. And so it was like this, we're not going to shoot our mom and dad. You know what I mean? And these were elite Russian airborne troops. And so I don't think that they want to try to send the 82nd Airborne out into the public and think somebody from the 82nd Airborne is going to shoot an unarmed American civilian. I think just like that was the end of the Soviet Union and the rise of Boris Yeltsin, I think that will be the end of this administration if they ever pull that card. And I think they know that. That's a bridge too far.
So with black folks staying off the streets in terms of protests, we may be inadvertently being the savior of this nation in terms of martial law.
Yeah. And we ain't gonna take this bait. We done been through this. We done been through this before.
Can you accept that?
Yeah. Yeah, I really can.
Okay.
I mean, I just think that, sometimes strategy is no strategy. And that's where we at.
That's it. You know what I mean? Hey, we did our part. We showed up to the polls. You know what I mean? We did it. And
Our strategy is no strategy.
Yeah. And we'll show up to the polls in 2026. But we ain't gonna get out there in the hot sun with y'all. You know what I mean? You should have you should have marched with us to them polls when we told you to. We told you what it was. We knew who he was. We showed you the article from when he took out Central Park. You know what I'm saying? We told you how he was discriminating, his racial policies, his lease and his housing policy. He told you who he was. He told you this is going to be the last time you have an election. He said this. He questioned birthright citizenship, but the Latinos still wouldn't vote.
The only thing that I will say about all of this is that we have not stamped out racism. And no matter what it is that we've done with the election of Barack Obama and them saying we vow to make sure there's never another black president, we had I already say Jimmy Carter, right? Joe Biden as our president, and it still goes back to those racist people. And each time it seems to be getting stronger and stronger. And this time, seems to be something where action needs to be taken.
I'm just quickly about racism and quickly relative to as quick as I can go. But racism is one, it's fear of competition, anxiety, because it's a changing world. And a lot of times people who are it's low information people who have anxiety about trade, who have anxiety about their jobs, who have anxiety. And so it's about scapegoating the other, and people are getting benefits, and this is why your life is the way it is, because of the other. Right. And so it's easy to buy into that message and accept personal responsibility or say, well, I should have went to school. I should have did this. I should have did this. It's easy to just blame the other. And so it's about fear and anxiety. It's about not wanting your kids to have to compete on a level playing field, right, with everyone else. On another level, it's also economically profitable for the people who know better.
Right.
To keep racism
going. You know what I mean? It's about it's economics. Slavery was died out until the advent of the cotton gin. And all of a sudden they needed black bodies to pick that cotton again. But other than that, slavery was a dying institution. It's economic. And they had to justify it based on race. So it's always been, racism is economic.
So let's talk about we got another topic, but I'm going to slip this one in. The shooting at Florida State University, and the assailant was a young white man whose mother was on the either sheriff's department. Yeah. And so United States has once again proven that it is the center for school shootings, mass shootings. It looks like this discussion about guns it's going to have to be one that's we're going to have to reckon with it sooner or later, if you want to reckon with it sooner or later. But again, it was a white man. You don't ever hear, speaking about, you never hear about black men, transgender folks, women going out shooting these schools. You always hear about it being white men.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole piece trying to put fear about these other marginalized groups as the boogeyman, and you're pointing to that person, maybe you need to look at who you're pointing, those three fingers pointing back at yourself. That maybe, that it's something in your community that's causing this anger to go out to the low-bearing fruit of a school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and again, the reason you don't see it being those groups, because those groups know they know how to process economic precarity. We've lived in economic uncertainty. We've lived through hardship and through racism, through systemic injustice. It doesn't bother us. But a lot of times you get these white boys who don't know how to live with it. The first time they get a setback, they want to go kill the world. You know what I mean? And so it's a manifestation of white privilege. Why isn't the world laying down at my feet? Why don't I have a Ferrari and a mansion and 10,000 beautiful women? They can't deal with, once they learn that that they don't own the world doesn't lay down at their feet. They want to go shoot up the world. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Whereas in these other marginalized segments of society, you know what I mean? We know how to, we've been dealing with hardship, right, and we know how to process it.
So this is to me, this is the boogeyman.
That is.
And again, it's not the transgender.
No.
You never hear about them doing anything. They're just trying to, they're just trying to do whatever they need to do to live.
That's it.
It isn't black folks.
It isn't. I
haven't seen a Hispanic person going around up into a school to shoot. You don't see about this. So I think that, hopefully, I'm going to say white community, y'all got some stuff to take care of. Because the United States, on your behalf, has become the #1 country of school shootings around the world.
Ben, yeah.
And look at him trying to smile.
Yeah. That's the face of a terrorist. That's what a terrorist looks like to me. You know what I mean? If I see him coming into the grocery store with that smile, you know what I mean? Or coming into a school or a church with that smile, to me, I'm not worried about MS-13. I'm worried about them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To me, it's the Aryan Brotherhood and the white nationalists and the white pride and the Nazis and what's some of those other groups, the Proud Boys. That's what terrorists look like. Mm-hmm. The FBI told them that's the biggest threat of terrorism is domestic terrorism.
The old FBI. Not this FBI.
Yeah, not this one. The real FBI said that's the biggest threat is domestic terrorism based on white supremacist ideology is the biggest terrorist threat. They didn't say MS-13. Mm-mm. They didn't say transgender.
They didn't say Black Panther.
They didn't say black. Yeah, no, they didn't say black folks. They said
didn't say NOI.
White nationalist organizations. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Okay, so this last topic, you're going to see me change personalities here real quick. So I was one of the women who was excited this past week to see 6 women go into space. I think I was more excited to see the spaceship take off and the rocket separate and the capsule separate and watch this rocket do a perfect landing, and then the capsule with the 6 women in it land safely. Now, this is where I'm going to talk about it from a different angle. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about whether or not they had a helmet in that capsule because they were glammed up coming off out of that capsule. I'm trying to figure out what type of glue Gail had in her hair to hold that, that weave in place. Okay. I'm wondering how much time they spent in training for them to get the title astronauts. So this is where my angst got kicked in. And when a person is assigned an astronaut tour, this is called a tour, he or she, it's about a 2 to 4 year training involved. And they got to go to a whole lot of stuff, underwater, recovery missions, these different simulations. They have to go through all kind of safety protocols. They have to do international training because of all the countries that they may interact with in the space station. There is a whole lot. These women's training lasted a few days before the launch. I got to thinking about Gilligan's Island and that 6-hour tour. It was a 6-hour or 3-hour tour. Well, that little short tour.
Yeah.
But anyway, this tour of this Blue Origin tour lasted really 10 minutes. They unbuckled their seatbelts. They were floating around in there, giggling, and and I would have been doing the same thing too. But when they landed, came out, glammed up, and I'm looking like, what the heck? All it was they were on an adventure. That cost a reserve seat was $150,000. The ticket could have been $200,000 to $500,000.
Okay.
So this was a tour. This was a 10-minute tour. They are not astronauts. They are just rich enough to afford a seat. Y'all want to say anything?
I'll say they were astronauts, and the scenario that you gave was what NASA would do. I don't know that any of these people for whether it be SpaceX or I don't know what this one was called.
Blue Origin.
Any of those, that any of the people that go up have to do that. When they're flying for NASA and they're sending people to the space station or stuff like that, that's more serious stuff. This was a pleasure trip.
Yeah, to me, they weren't astronauts, though. They weren't astronauts. They were just...
So what has to be an astronaut for you?
I think they're scientists.
Oh, okay.
They've got a job to do. The only thing they did was look out the window.
So what do you call them?
Tourists. Space tourists.
Okay. Space tours. Okay.
To me, an astronaut is a scientist. They've got a job to do when they go up. Didn't hear about... when I listened to Gail didn't have to do anything. She just went up there, peeped out the window, unbuckled her seat, floated around weightlessly, giggle and everything, and, sat back down.
I ain't touching that one. I'm not touching this topic with a 10-foot pole.
Go for it.
I'm not touching this topic with a 10-foot pole.
Go for it.
I mean, and I really don't. I don't know enough about it. I haven't watched the space launch.
It was a beautiful launch.
Really,
but
I tell you what.
They're not astronauts. They're space
1986. I ain't got to date myself, but 1986. We're in a classroom in ROTC. It was my birthday, and we were singing "Happy Birthday," and we were watching a space launch. And right when they were singing "Happy Birthday," the Challenger blew up.
Yeah.
January 28th.
Yeah.
The Challenger blew up, and I haven't watched a space launch ever since.
So to me, again, I'm happy that the ladies did it, but to assign them the title astronaut, to me, is ludicrous.
I just want to make a comment with what Caleb said. The most important part for me was that they were able to return safely.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the only thing, because I prayed God,
Don't let nothing happen.
Don't let nothing happen to them. You know what? And for me, I wouldn't trust Blue Origin or SpaceX, either one.
And then Blue Origin, is that Branson's?
No, that's Bezos.
Bezos is okay. Blue Origin.
Blue Origin's Bezos.
Okay.
SpaceX is Musk.
Okay.
And
I thought there's a Branson have his own?
Intergalactic or something like that.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So no, again, I think every time they go up, and they come back safely, it's a learning experience, and I think it increases, it pushes the envelope, and it increases our knowledge, it increases our capacity to do this safely, and I mean. I'm for it. Let's get it. Let's more trips. Let's get it cheaper rockets, more people, and You know,
That
maybe
thing
one
looked
day.
like a trash can with windows.
No, it didn't.
Maybe one, I mean, you know, did you see?
Else to me?
Did
Kinda-
you-
Yeah.
There's more of a phallic
Yeah.
look about
Okay.
it.
They said that they detected life. Did you guys see that article? It was in a it's a planet that's a few light years away or whatever it is, 100-something light years away, that they detected the fundamental elements of what could be life. It's a planet that's multiple times larger than Earth.
Okay.
From
So-
this tour? From this tour?
No,
No,
not from this
no,
tour,
no.
not from this tour.
Okay.
But no, that's what I'm saying. I am all for it. Let's keep sending up rockets. Let's keep increasing our knowledge and our capabilities, and you know what I mean. And so, hey, maybe one day, you know what I mean, we will find something else or someone else out there. So I'm all for it. And again, congratulations to the ladies, and congratulations to a successful launch and return.
One quick question: who's the black girl in the middle? The other black girl.
You know what?
You always on the
I
prowl.
meant to. I meant to look her up. So I meant to look
Who's
her
that
up.
other black chick?
Look,
There she is.
Yeah, her. Who's
She's
that?
a civil rights activist.
Okay. Where she work out of? She got a blue nail and a what you call it? Okay. I got a
But you know, and we're going to close on this. Now, what I didn't like about this, that is it Bezos or Bezos?
Basil.
He thumbs down any type of anti-DEI element because that crew
Right.
was diverse. So I love that.
And that's his ex-wife, right?
No, that's his fiance.
Oh.
oh, it's
Okay.
his fiance. Okay.
That's Lauren.
Oh no, I wouldn't have went up there with her. He might have been trying to get rid of her. I was like, nah, I ain't going up there with her.
So it seems like we had, interesting discussion this week. And as always, we appreciate any comments that you put into the comment box. We also want to take time to thank our producer, Carl Booker, because without him, none of this would have been possible. I don't know. We may find somebody who has $450,000 who wants to send us up to space for 10 minutes to give our opinions as to what's really going on up there. But in the meantime, this is contemporary. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because I was gonna say all I want is somebody to take my citizenship for $5 million. Okay, I ain't got to leave the planet.
So this is Contemporary Black Voices, where we tell our stories our way.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Man,
Now-
42 minutes, really?
Now that